You know that feeling, right? When you just suspect someone feels more than they're letting on. It's like there's this whole other conversation happening in the silence between words. Well, that's what we're going to do. We're going to dive in and learn how to decode those silent signals. I mean, it's a question we've all asked ourselves at some point, isn't it? We spend so much time overanalyzing text messages and every single word someone says, but what about the stuff they show us, but never actually speak? Yeah, that's exactly what we're going to get into. And it's such a wild idea when you really think about it, that a simple glance or a small gesture can actually shout what a person's voice is too afraid to even whisper. These unspoken feelings, they have a language all their own, and it usually shows up in these super subtle, tiny little ways. All right, so let's put on our detective hats for a bit. Our mission today is to uncover this hidden language of attraction. We're going to break it down into signals that are super clear and hopefully pretty easy to spot once you know what you're looking for. And the key to this whole thing is something called psychological cues. Now, don't let the fancy name fool you. We are not talking about huge, grand, romantic gestures here. We're talking about the small stuff, subtle behaviors and intentional actions that just kind of give away a person's true feelings. So the main thing to remember is we're looking for the little things. Okay, so let's start with the most honest signals of all, the ones people don't even realize they're sending. These are completely involuntary, subconscious reactions. And that's what makes them so pure, right? Because they happen before our brain can jump in and say, whoa, well, hold on, let's filter that. First up, we've got a phenomenon called the mirror effect. You've probably seen this without even realizing it. It's when someone subconsciously starts copying your behavior. It's this deep, primal way our brains have of saying, hey, I'm with you, we're on the same wavelength. It's all tied to empathy and our basic need to connect with people, and it builds this instant, unspoken bond. And the wild thing is just how subtle this can be. Like, next time you're talking to someone, pay attention. If you lean forward, do they do it too? If you rest your chin on your hand, do they kind of do the same thing a few seconds later? They might even start using a little word or a catchphrase that you use all the time. It's just their brain totally on autopilot, trying to build that connection. Ah, the eyes. They almost never lie, do they? But we're not just talking about those long, dramatic stares you see in the movies. Nope. We're talking about something a little more complicated. A specific pattern of looking at you and then quickly looking away. It's this little dance, you know? The frequent looks are basically them saying, hey, I'm drawn to you. But that quick glance away the second you catch them, that's them saying, and I'm kind of nervous for you to know it. It's that mix, that push and pull of interest and shyness that's so telling. Which, leads us perfectly into our next signal, nervousness. Now, you might think being nervous around someone is a bad thing, but in this context, it can be a massive clue that they're attracted to you. And why is that? It's because your presence raises the emotional stakes for them. Their cool, calm, and collected vibe gets just a little shaken up. Seriously, think about it. Do they suddenly start fidgeting with their watch or tapping their fingers, but only when they're talking to you? Or maybe they trip over a word or two, or let out this kind of anxious little laugh. That's probably not a lack of confidence. A lot of the time, it's just a sign that their brain is going into overdrive because they really care about the impression they're making on you.
Okay, so we've just covered all the involuntary stuff, right? The subconscious tells that the body gives away. But now we're going to switch gears. Let's look at the conscious choices, the things people do on purpose. We're moving from gut reactions and body language to deliberate, intentional actions.
Right. So this next batch of signals is all about choice. These are the things people actively do that show you're really on their mind. And because these take actual effort and attention, that's what makes them so incredibly meaningful. Okay, this one is seriously powerful. When someone is into you, they don't just hear you, they actually listen. Our brains are literally hardwired to prioritize and remember things we think are important. So when they're soaking up all the little things, those random throwaway comments you make, that's a huge sign of genuine engagement. So let's say you mentioned offhand a few weeks ago that you were worried about a work presentation. If they come back and ask you how it went, that's not just them being polite. That's a conscious choice. They chose to store that information because it was important to you. That's an action that screams, what you say really matters to me. Next up is a signal that's just baked into our DNA pretty much. It's this protective instinct. And I'm not talking about being overbearing or controlling. It's more of a fundamental desire to make sure someone is okay, that they're safe and comfortable, both physically and emotionally. And this can show up in all sorts of simple, modern ways, right? It's that simple text, "Did you get home safe?" Or it's them gently putting a hand on your back to guide you through a super crowded room. Or, And this is a big one. It's them speaking up and defending your point of view when you're in a group conversation. All right, our final intentional signal is maybe the most important one of all. And the key word here, the one to really focus on, is consistent. See, anyone can be nice once in a while. Anyone can say something encouraging. But true affection, that shows up in reliable, consistent support. This is all about finding someone who is just consistently in your corner. They're not just there for the big, flashy wins. They're the ones who remember your personal goals and actually ask you about them. They're the ones celebrating that tiny little victory you had at work. They just make you feel seen and valued, over and over again. So, okay, we've looked at the subconscious signals, the body language, and we've looked at the conscious choices people make. But now, for the big question, how do you put all these puzzle pieces together? How do you go from just noticing these things to actually decoding what they all mean? And honestly, this right here is the absolute key to everything. A single nervous laugh, it could mean anything. But a nervous laugh, plus they're mirroring your posture, and then they ask about that obscure band you mentioned last week, see? That's not a coincidence anymore. That's a pattern. You're not looking for a single lonely star. You're looking for the whole constellation. So here it is, your simple 4-step decoder. Think of it as your personal toolkit. Step 1, observe their body language. All the involuntary stuff. Step 2, listen for the little details they remember. Step 3, note how consistent their support is. And finally, step 4, the most critical step, connect the patterns. Do all the clues start pointing in the same direction? Because at the end of the day, learning to read these signals is really only half the battle. The other half is figuring out what to do with what you've learned. This knowledge gives you a new kind of insight, a new lens to see people through. But what comes next? Well, that's entirely up to you.